Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the morning show. My name is Phil Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hope you've had a great morning so far already. Maybe some of you have been watching the cameras. There seems to be lots going on. So for the next half an hour, as usual, I'm going to go through all of the cameras depending on where the activity is, or the sounds, or anything, and see what comes our way. Those of you that are watching on YouTube, if you would like to ask any questions, go across to the africam.com site, go to the BOMA, and that's where you'll be able to send some questions through. Hopefully I'll have the answers. And those of you already watching from the website itself, please do send through as many questions you can. It's always nice to interact with you, the audience. So we're going to start off here at Terrapin. And the main thing here for me today is quite interesting. And those of you that have been watching the cams regularly, or we were here on Friday, and the biggest change is the color. There seems to be a whole lot more green. The last time we spoke about how things would change with a bit more rain. And sure enough, this weekend, there wasn't actually more rain. It's obviously just taken a bit of time to flourish, but that line of green in the foreground wasn't there on Friday. It's quite interesting to see the conversion. Even the grass in the foreground is a little bit greener. So nature's responding to the watering and to the system that it's part of, to the seasons. And so we'll see the animals respond to that in turn. It all connects. The knock-on effect is very obvious out here in nature. And again, is something we as humans, it would be nice if we could learn that lesson, that whatever happens on one end creates a change on the other. And generally speaking, in nature, they're all positive changes. By that I mean they're changes that causes things to grow and move forward. The next big change I'm looking forward to is the new generation. A lot of the animals will have their peak births in December, January, going into February. I haven't seen any babies yet, but it won't be long before we see babies of all kinds. At the moment, we've got wonderful elephant activity around the pan. The other thing that you may notice from last week, because that's when the rain was falling and it was quite overcast and a lot cooler, that temperature gauge has definitely gone up. It's sitting somewhere around 36 or 37 degrees Celsius. I think that's somewhere around 90 Fahrenheit. When we go across to some of the cams in the north and east, that's actually gone up to 100 today. It's 40 degrees in the Kruger National Park today. So that'll also change the behavior of the animals. And it does seem like there's, generally speaking, more activity around the waterholes today than there have been last week. I'd like to go across to the Olifants River Cam just to have a look what's going on there. We might come back to Tao. It's always nice to switch between the cams, just like the action cam that we have in Africam Premium. You can move from one camera to the next, wherever the action is. And I love looking around and trying to spot things. I'm sure the zoomies, the folks that operate the cameras that are based all around the world, also enjoy doing that. They're really good at what they're doing. Here we've got some baboons enjoying the shade. I think if I was there, I'd also put my picnic blanket out there and have a lie down. It looks like the perfect spot. It looks to me like that's an African ebony tree that's creating the shade. It's quite likely to be that, or a jackalberry. And one baboon is definitely quite busy feeding on something, and it could be the berries from the tree. There's some coming down the trunk of the tree. There must be some up in the tree as well. Such a beautiful view. Let's just have a listen to the environment. Such a peaceful space. Let's see if we can spot the hippos. I haven't seen them yet. The river seems to have kept its height. It's still relatively high. It hasn't gone right down. There might have been some rain up country as well, so it's not just this area. There are some bigger hills and almost mountains where the catchment areas of the olifants that will keep the flow quite steady throughout the summer months, hopefully. Got a question from Manu about the bird calls that are calling. There's quite a few going, Manu, but let's have a listen out and see which ones we can pick out. There's a bit of a whining. Wah, wah. That's my impression of it anyways. The white-fronted bee-eaters. That was the black-headed oriole giving a very clear whistle. Let's listen out. There's also a constant, quick, high-pitched whistle. That'll be a pied wagtail, I think, often seen on the river's banks. It does seem to be constantly calling around olifants. Let's see if we can hear it. Now, of course, it stopped. That's the way the bush works. I'm sure it'll come again, though. There's also dark-capped bulbuls calling in the background. A really good thing to do, Manu, is if you can get an app either by Roberts Birds or Sasol. You can get that, and on that app, each bird you can play their calls. So that will help you a lot to learn when you're watching the cams. I don't know if you heard that bird call. That was a Burchell's cuckoo. So birding from these cameras is really interesting and something new for me, and I love actually sitting listening. There goes the cuckoo again. Oh, he stopped now. I don't know if anyone heard that, but listen out for the Burchell's cuckoo. It's also known as the rainbird. They often indicate the onset of a storm. So yeah, as I was saying, listening out for bird calls on these cameras is definitely something I love to do and would definitely recommend. And if you can get one of these bird apps, it does make it quite interesting to listen out for the call and then see what they look like. Folks, while we let the birds calling here go, and the oriole, who seems to be dominating the show here, I want to move across to Rosie's pan quickly. There seems to be one of the serrated edge terrapins that it looks like, I don't think it is stuck, but it looks like it's got itself landed on the point of that rock. Let's watch it for a bit and see what happens. The one coming in from the left there looks like it could be offering its services, towing service. It's quite a big one that's come out trying to come out the water there. It's really interesting behavior. You don't often see much movement from these reptiles. Again, typically, if you arrive there on foot or in a vehicle, you cause things to move off and hide. But as we're in a perfect position to be flies on the wall, or maybe we prefer to be called birds on the tree, and we get to see really interesting, completely undisturbed behavior, all sorts of animals. Let's see what this one decides to do. The one on the rock is deciding to retract its limbs. It's got good balance. Let's keep watching for a little while longer. Just want to see what happens to the one on the rock. Well, there's certainly no rush with the decision making there. Let's give them a bit of time. We'll move across to another camera. Let's go across to Nkoropan. Seems to be quite a bit of activity there, and we'll keep an eye open on anything that changes there with the Terrapins. Those of you that were watching the cams yesterday here at Nkoropan, there was quite a bit of Impala activity. There were a lot of males, the bachelor herds of Impala Rams, and a fair amount of them were having some sparring matches with each other. So those sparring matches are really important. They happen on a regular basis, if not a daily basis, between younger males, or sometimes the males coming into their prime against those that are in their prime. And they're practicing for next year in May when the rut starts. And not only practicing the battle, but they're also determining constant understanding of hierarchy. So that when the females get back into estrus around May and June, that there's not too much confusion as to who's actually going to compete for them. It's quite important to keep a general tab on who's dominant. It is quite interesting to watch. So the battles we've been watching recently, they're not too serious. It's almost more playful, which is what sparring is. Also wonderfully green here at Nkoropan. Those warthogs are loving the green grass. They don't need to do too much kneeling at this point. When you see them kneeling on the ground, they'll often use their upper lip to go for the rhizomes and the roots of the grasses, but at the moment they're sweet enough all the way through. Okay, well, while they're having a snack on the fresh grass, let's go across to Kwamaritani Pan. There seems to be a grey heron very much on the hunt. We do see them quite regularly being very successful with the frogs in these pans, in particular the platanas. Oh, there we go. He's got something. Was that a frog or a fish? Sorry, I didn't see that too clearly. That was very quick. It is good timing. Let's see if it's successful again. Oh, here we go. Another one. Now, I'm not sure if those are fish, little catfish, can't see the legs. He's grabbing them and swallowing them. The camera is maybe battling a bit in the wind. Maybe if we zoom out a bit further, we'll get a clearer view. But that was a really good example of how successful they are in their hunting techniques and how much their efforts get rewarded. We often see the grey herons very busily moving through these waterholes, whether they're at Kwa Maritani waterhole or in Tau or anywhere else for that matter. Very successful. There we go. There were 3 elephants in the waterhole not too long ago, and I suspect they churned up the mud and flushed out any frog or fish that might be in there. And then the herons come in. So we've just crossed back over here to Rosie's pan again. And this big fella actually chased the smaller one off the rock, and he happened to get off the rock quite quickly. I wonder if he'll take his spot. They're spending a fair amount of time warming themselves up, and they'll do most of their feeding during the evening hours. So I'm sure this big chap's gonna just find a nice spot to do some sunbathing. Just want to go across to one of the video clips that was taken in the last couple of days. And it's just a really beautiful shot of a pied kingfisher. And in this case, it's a female pied kingfisher. And those of you that have a bird book with you or maybe know the markings, but this particular one has those black chest markings. And the male actually has a necklace below that, a black lining, black necklace. So they're quite easy to tell apart. But this is a female kingfisher, and I just thought it's such a lovely shot. And she's perched up there, also waiting to see for any movement. And they drop in there very skillfully, grabbing mostly little fish, but we'll also go for tadpoles and small frogs. So that was a nice picture there, very clear, the difference between male and female. And then there was a really interesting scene that was captured. This time at Tembe, I don't know if anyone saw this, these 2 young lions decided they would try their luck with this big giraffe bull. Let's keep watching and see how this relationship turns out here. It's the lioness, is a young lioness, really going for it almost. But then starts to realize quite wisely that that's a very large animal to try and take down. So these are those 2 sub-adult lions that we've been seeing quite regularly. I think they're the offspring of that female that's quite injured. And they're definitely trying their luck. I would say that giraffe is too big. Lions do hunt giraffe more so in some areas than others. They do need to look out though, because they can have a very powerful back kick, the giraffe is, as well as a forward chop. But these young lions are really quite interested to try their luck. And it's this sort of behavior that one day they'll be lucky. One day they'll have success with an unusually large or an unusual prey that they're not used to catching. And that's how they learn to hunt different things. Oh, turned the tables a little there. Giraffe coming back at the lines. The giraffe starts moving right towards the camera, just giving us such a perfect view and insight into the relationship between these top predators and one of the larger prey species. I would say you probably need a pride of 10 to take down that big giraffe. But these two think otherwise. You can see there's a bit of the mane starting on that line in the foreground. That's the young male. That's really, I found quite fascinating to see that behavior between these two. And like I say, if lions and leopards and predators in general have that instinct to try, they're always looking, they're always really inquisitive. And of course, in some cases, they get themselves into big trouble. I mean, one kick from that giraffe, break the jaw, kill them immediately. But as you saw there, they weren't going for it and actually trying to engage 100%, but they were certainly having a look to see what could happen, what would the result be. And slowly but surely they'll learn different techniques. In some areas, like here, I suspect they spend a lot of time hunting in nyalas as well as warthogs. So they don't really need to bother too much with the big dangerous things. But in some areas, they can hunt elephants, hippos, big giraffe. The learning curves of these predators is quite incredible. Right. That was some action that happened a couple of days now. We're back onto the live activity, and this big elephant bull has come right up to the camera where he's found some delicious mud. Let's see what he does with it. He's thrown some on his back already. Sometimes, as we've seen quite regularly, they'll completely submerge themselves and roll around in that sort of mud. It's the perfect cooling mechanism. And of course, when that mud dries off, they'll go and scratch up against trees and termite mounds and pulls off the dried mud. And inside that mud, you often find ticks and other ectoparasites stuck inside the caked mud, and that's how they get rid of them, or another way that they get rid of them. Wow. Really does give us the perfect view. Folks, we've just come back to Olifants River here, and this is where we'll end the show. Oh, how about that? Some waterbuck have joined, or maybe taken the place of the baboons. It must be the best spot on the bank. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I look forward to catching up with you tomorrow afternoon again. Thank you for all your questions. And if you do have any feedback with regards to the show, it's really appreciated if you send it to feedback@africam.com. And keep watching the cams. You never know what you're going to see. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.